through evidence, trying to put together the pieces of a horrendous crime. But one piece will always be missing. They will never be able to talk to Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris to understand what drove them to kill. But there are others who can shed at least some light on this dark event. Our correspondent, Carol Marine, has spoken with one boy whose story has powerful parallels to what happened in Littleton.
In 1997, when he was 16, Evan Ramsey walked into his school in Bethel, Alaska, pulled out a 12-gauge shotgun, and murdered 2 people. Then, as now, people struggle to understand how it could happen. We found some answers and found that there is more connecting Bethel and Littleton than just teenagers with guns and a grudge. We went to Bethel to reconstruct what happened to Evan Ramsey and to hear him tell us, in his own words, about the rage that drives a teenager, any teenager, to kill. There is only one way in and one way out of Bethel. An isolated town of 5,000 on the Alaska tundra, its name means hallowed spot. Today, that spot is marked by one unholy act, a crime no one was prepared for.
I was in the teacher's lounge and heard a popping sound. It sounded like firecracker or a balloon popping.
Renea Thanis taught art at Bethel High School.
So I walked down the hall, and kids were streaming past down the hallway, screaming, "He's got a gun, he's got a gun."
The boy with the gun, 16-year-old Evan Ramsey, had shot his first victim. A popular student and athlete, 15-year-old Josh Palacios, had been mortally wounded. Ryan Curta was sitting next to Josh.
Josh grabbed his stomach and fell to the ground. I'm hit. And then I got up, I turned, and I ran back into the classrooms.
Renea Thanis went to the spot where Josh lay dying. When she looked up, Evan was pointing his 12-gauge shotgun directly at her.
I said, "Evan, put the gun down. Put the gun down. You don't have to do this."
Had you ever seen him look like this?
Angry like that, that uncontrolled anger, I had never seen that. He was not in control at all.
Evan left and minutes later returned and killed the principal, Ron Edwards. Then it seemed he had one more victim to claim.
He started putting the gun under his chin.
Evan put the gun under his own chin.
He put his gun under his own chin, and he started saying, "They're not going to take me alive. They're not going to get me."
Evan Ramsey never fired the final shot. After a short standoff with police, he surrendered and was convicted of murder and assault. Why he did what he did was what many people in Bethel couldn't understand. We asked Evan Ramsey that question when we met him at a prison in Anchorage.
My main objective of going into the high school was to check out.
To check out?
Yeah, to commit suicide.
Is it possible, Evan, you didn't really want to kill yourself?
It might be. I mean, but I don't know. I really wanted to die.
The story of Evan's life is a tortured tale. When Evan was 7, his father went to prison. His mother became an alcoholic, and Evan and his 2 brothers were shipped off to a series of foster homes. In one of those homes, according to court testimony, he suffered sexual abuse and humiliation. Psychiatrist Dr. John Smith examined Evan a few months after the murders and found at the age of 10, Evan had attempted suicide.
He went to a cliff, as he described it to me, and got in the water and was planning to wade out to sea and drowned himself.
So from a very early stage, you have a child with chronic, untreated depression and despair.
Yes.
By the time he was in high school, he was using marijuana, getting poor grades, and struggling to control an explosive temper. And he spent hours every day playing the violent video game Doom. The same video game that was also said to be a source of fascination for Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the 2 suspects in the Colorado shooting, as well as 14-year-old Michael Carneal, who opened fire in Paducah, Kentucky. And there is another similarity. Evan was an outsider, someone who didn't fit in with the athletes and the most popular kids at the school. At Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold reportedly felt rejected by other students. What Evan told us is that no one, not teachers, friends, or other students, understood the rejection he felt.
I never knew my family except for my little brother. And there's people picking on me.
How would they pick on you?
I'd be called a piece of shit, a bastard. I've been called a spaz and a retard.
There are kids who are lonely, there are kids who are depressed, there are kids who feel picked on, and somehow they get through it.
Some things people take differently.
Could you have kept yourself from doing it?
I don't know.
On the day he was sentenced for the 2 murders, Evan showed little emotion in the courtroom until he was given a chance to speak.
I'm so sorry.
Evan, when you cry, do you cry for the people who died? Do you cry for yourself?
Somewhat, but I just wish that I hadn't done that.
Evan is sorry that he has to face the consequences of all these things.
Renee Erb prosecuted Evan Ramsey and said whatever his current remorse, he planned and practiced the shooting. And Principal Ron Edwards was someone he wanted to kill.
There's some people in this world that are no good. Nobody really knows where they come from or why, but they've always been with us, and it may be that they always are.
Is Evan Ramsey no good?
I think that Evan falls into that category.
Does that seem harsh?
But it doesn't mean that I don't feel sorry for him. I do.
But you see something essential to him that makes him no good.
He's dangerous.
But this is not just a story of one boy with a gun. Evan Ramsey did not plan his violence alone. He had help and encouragement from 2 14-year-old boys, one of whom helped him learn to load and fire a 12-gauge shotgun, and told him that fame and fortune would follow. The day of the shooting, a group of students gathered in the second-floor library overlooking the lobby because they were told by Evan and his accomplices that something big was going to happen. By the time Evan arrived, Dr. Smith said there was no way for him to back out.
He'd been up all night. His thinking had become narrow in terms of his mission to do something big.
And because other kids knew, and then he would have been humiliated in the face of them if he backed down.
That trapped him.
But prosecutor Renee Erb maintained that Evan wasn't trapped. He was driven by his own ego.
The event here, in this case, is all about the fact that it's public. It's all about Evan. It's not about the people that he killed.
They're just sort of incidental.
They're cannon fodder.
So he filled a gallery, in
Yes.
short.
Yeah.
And in that gallery, by Renee Athanas' estimate, were 10 to 15 kids.
Some of the kids I don't think knew that there was going to be a gun involved.
But some of them did.
I think some of them did.
What was going on? The kids wouldn't come to you or the principal or someone and say, there's trouble here.
I don't think they believed that it was really good. I don't know what really, but I don't think they really believed it. It's like they were going to watch TV or something. It wasn't going to be real. You know, they didn't really think somebody would die. Why somebody wouldn't tell has bothered all of us.
There is one more theory for why Evan did what he did, a theory that goes beyond depression and isolation, something that separates the case of Evan Ramsey from that of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. Evan calls it a family curse, and it's something we asked his father about. Evan said that he believes that this family lives under a kind of generational curse.
Yeah, I think that sometime too.
Don Ramsey became known as the Rambo of Alaska. In 1986, enraged when the Anchorage Times refused to publish a political letter he had written, Don Ramsey showed up at the newspaper's office. And when you walked into the Anchorage Times, what were you going to do?
Get my article printed.
And how were you going to accomplish that?
At the time, I didn't know, but I was armed and ready to go to war. I had a AR-180 223 semi-auto, something like 180 rounds of ammo for it. Snub barrel 44 Magnum and about 30 rounds for it.
Don Ramsey said he was ready to die, just like Evan was. And just like Evan, after a short standoff with police, he surrendered and went to prison. As people look for the responsibility or someone to blame, some people say, you're to blame. You kicked off that first domino.
Yeah, I did.
You accept that.
Yeah, I'll accept that.
But what don't you accept? What's the rest of it?
Well, you take like where the children were in foster homes and stuff like that. The wife started drinking and neglecting the kids. What they did is they took them out of an abusive environment and put them into an abusive environment.
Don Ramsey was released from prison in February of 1997. 2 weeks later came the shooting at Bethel High.
The tragedy of everyone in Bethel, particularly the young man and the principal who were killed and their families, is that Evan was not recognized as needing as much help as he did.
The frightening thing that some people told us in Bethel was that there were other kids who looked like they were far more problematic than Evan Ramsey. How do we know with any certainty who is the kid who is on the verge of something disastrous?
You don't. It's scary to face that, but you don't.
2 years later, many lives are still affected by what happened in Bethel. At Evan's sentencing, the judge called Renee Athanas a hero who 3 times tried to stop Evan. But for her, that was little comfort.
I'm mad at Evan for putting me through this. I'm mad at all those other boys and girls who didn't come forward and say anything. I'm mad at parents for not taking care of their children, so they ended up doing this. I'm mad at teachers and society for not being aware of the problems and dealing with it young. Kindergarten, first grade, that's when you need to do it. This tragedy didn't have to occur. Those other ones didn't have to occur.
Evan's 2 14-year-old accomplices were tried and sentenced as juveniles. They will be free when they're 19. Evan Ramsey was sentenced to 200 years in prison and will be eligible for parole when he is 75. In the end, there was no lasting fame for Evan Ramsey, but it was something that was still on his mind.
I'm dead to the world. In a few months, nobody will really remember me. There'll be other people that will commit other offenses, and I'll be considered yesterday's news.